Sachaqa Talk, Artist Residency in the Amazon Rainforest, Peru. Hi, I'm Trina Brammah, and with us here today is Laura Matthews, a fellow British artist and a really close friend of mine. Laura was a visiting artist staying at Sachaqa when I gave birth to my daughter Leia in the communal house. It was a very big moment for me, obviously giving birth to a child in the Amazon rainforest with just a midwife. As Laura was part of this experience, I think that helped to bond our relationship. We also have a very secret world, the secret world of visions, and we both understand that world, which is it's something that we mostly hide from the world. And we both are visionary painters, and you can kind of see that we are following a similar process of journeying through our internal dreams and seeing signs in the reality. And it's a mixture of teachings and understanding, and we have a very complex path that we're always following, and we understand each other's journey. So then we always have very exciting conversations and very exciting meetings that are always very transformative and very healing for us both. So in this podcast, I'd like to share with you our conversations, and Laura's will start with a question, and then I will follow with my own questions for Laura. We're always very intrigued to understand more about our creative process as we feed off of that. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of this podcast as we get out of our relationship together. So Laura, you have a question for me first to get the ball rolling.
Hi, Trina. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really enjoying it, by the way. So, yes, I will start with the first question then. My question is always going to start off with about your attraction to natural pigments and why you have decided to not go and buy your paints like everybody else, but to go and find them, source them, process them yourself, which is one of the reasons why I went to Sachaqa in the first place. I had a strange anxiety for a while that I was like, what am I going to do if I can't buy paints anymore? What will I do? I don't know how to make them. So I kind of went on myself on a little journey to learn about all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, like I said, it was one of the major reasons why I was attracted to Sachaqa in the first place. So please let me know.
Well, I'd say, was it 12 years ago? I did a ayahuasca ceremony in Pisac, and in the ceremony, I had a clear conversation with the mother plant, and she said that I had to collect and find my own natural pigments, and that I had to stop buying factory processed paints. So from that day, it just appeared like the pigments were finding me. And there was a friend of ours who was painting his house with earth that he'd collected from Lamai. And so Daniel and I walked to Lamai, and we got 12 buckets full of different coloured earth. And so at that time I was mixing acrylic paint and the natural pigments. But you know, like when we moved to the jungle, I was just finding natural pigments everywhere, you know. And at that point, you know, I wasn't sure why I was doing it. I was just kind of doing what I was told in a sense. But now what I realise with the natural pigments is that how important it is to connect with a place that where the pigment comes from. So every time I'm working, so I'll pick up a green stone, and I know that comes from the River Kumbasa, and I'm like, I know that and I'm connecting with the River Kumbasa in some way when I'm painting with that colour. or if I get one of my favourite browns, which is one of those Lamaze colours that I still have after 12 years. And I always connect to Lamai, when I paint with that colour. And also I have some indigenous from colours from Australia that a friend gave me. And when I use those colours, I really feel like that that it's sacred, divine pigment. I mean, I would love to collect more crystal pigments. But they're very expensive and it's kind of hard to ship things to Peru. But I am learning at the moment how to make plants into paint so that we can get more blues and some of the brighter colours. I'm still experimenting with that, but it was an Italian girl that came and introduced me to a technique that can fix the plant dyes into a really durable paint. So that's really exciting. And do you know what? That connects us back to the Quechua and Mist communities, because then we go and learn from the Quechua and Mist communities how to make traditional colours out of plants. And it's, for me, it's not necessarily, oh, like that's an amazing colour, or although the natural pigments for me hum, and I love that the way that they hum on the canvas, like they just have this sound. And then when you start mixing some bright, cold acrylic paints, or you just start going all over the canvas, and I'm like, oh, and so it's kind of like the way I cook in a sense. I only cook with things that I feel like are healthy. So it's the same with the natural pigments. What vibration does it have, and knowing to know where it came from. Like, it's so nice when you know that a food has come from somebody's land and they're growing organically. It just, you just feel like you're filling your belly with that energy, that good energy. And the same with painting. That's how I feel about the natural pigments now. And I really do think that they have to be cleansed. When I make a painting, that, before I send it on its way, that I cleanse that painting. And I like, as crystals, pigments, they pick up the vibrations and people's thoughts, maybe, or it picks up the environment, and also, so it needs to be cleansed to bring back the original place. And I have actually felt, when I took a painting home from my sister, and when I slept at her house, I had a dream actually about the River Cumbasa, and I was dreaming about San Roque, and it was like the San Roque was coming into my dream through the painting. And that made me kind of realize, wow, it's a really beautiful intention, whether you believe it or not, the fact that you carry in place through a painting. And isn't that kind of, what our indigenous ancestors were doing? So it's more about that. It's not about, oh, is it amazing color, or is it not amazing color, or is it easy or is it not easy? It's more so of that. Like, that's why I use the natural pigments. And also it's bringing artists that come to Sachaqa to the communities to learn more about ancient techniques.
Can I just ask how you feel about um, artists that just use acrylics? Because I know you said something about the vibration, but I presume that's for you, because who use acrylics, who use store bought paints, and if you feel it has any effect on the actual finished artworks in their vibration, or if it's just really about the intention that goes into the painting, and um, how that works. Because for me, although I do use natural pigments that I make, and it's only certain pigments I actually use, but I always feel that I kind of start to know when a painting's finished for me, because it starts to vibrate, it starts to have a heartbeat. But I'm just interested in what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, well, with the natural pigments, I know that you are always researching for your own pigments, and even if you buy natural pigments and you're looking for uh, a great sourced pigment, you know that you're not just buying any old cheap acrylic paint. You're actually looking, you know, for where how they were made and what's in them and things like that. And I know that you do that anyway. But it is an entirely personal thing, isn't it? It really is a personal thing. It's about my relationship to the canvas, my relationship to the paint. But of course, you know, when people paint with brighter colours and use that within their emotional language and connect it to the different colours that you can't get. Like I've just done a podcast with Ellen and her work that she's creating right now away from the natural pigments are just so powerful, and because the range of sounds in the colours that that we have gathered over time is, sometimes you need that broad range to get what you're producing. There's a lot of feeling in colour, isn't there? But for me, I guess it's just my colour range is, it tells its own story, yet people know when it's one of my paintings because of the colours, basically the colours that I'm using, over again. And I do introduce a new colour every now and again. The ones that you gave me some natural pigments, the green in the new painting. But yeah, I'm not a complete snob, about, I don't like that painting because it's using synthetic acrylic paint. Because it's just it isn't entirely personal, and it's about my work. Like the bright colours that you use, I don't really think that I would be able to paint so well with the colours that you use as well. I don't think I have. I know it's bad of me to say it. I don't really have a great sense of colour. I don't think. If I'm faced with a million different colours, I'm just so confused, so utterly confused. You know, you you have to like really work the colds with the warms and get the complementaries right, and um, but whereas you can't lose with the natural pigments because they always work really well together, and so it is that as well that I escape that that too many colours to choose from. And I can sometimes add this bright yellow that I have, which is a natural pigment, but it's very, very bright, and it's a complete different vibration from my normal hums. And I just don't like it. I start getting rid of it straight away. Um, so I guess my colour language is very simple, and and yeah, I like it that way, and I like the way that my paintings feel after from seeing the colours. Maybe it's just my language through colour. It's a language. It's complete. It's a language, and it's like some people like hip hop and some people like jazz. It's like that for me. Is colour is very much connected to sound, and like I'm probably more of a jazz player in the colour field, like just with one instrument and going for it. Whereas then you've got lots of different sounds in other music, that classical music maybe, and so I don't know. Yeah, I'd say I'm more of a, I don't know, although there's some really high sounds in there in jazz as well. I would really love to find some plants that are really high and really cold, and shout out amongst all of the warm hums. But I feel I want to find the colour, you know, rather than buy it. Although I do love lapis lazuli, and you know, I would love to put some crystal colours in there. But yeah, that's why it's my language. So I'm going to ask you about the painting that I've just sent you. I would like you to say what the title is, and it's a painting that I've been fascinated by since you painted it, and you've never really told me what it's where it came from, what the journey was to get there, and what you went through when you painted it, and what were you doing at the time?
Okay, so you're probably going to be possibly annoyed by this, but I can't actually remember the title. I'm not entirely sure I even ever gave it a proper title, because it was one that was gifted and went to somebody before it was even finished. So, you know, quite often I don't always give my paintings a title, which is slightly annoying when I go back through a back catalogue and I'm like, I don't, you know, I've got to come up with something. And so maybe that they're around the world with different titles, but I am not particularly, don't have a an online presence. It's probably something I should think about, but you know, because the artwork just kind of appears, and then you know, once it's done, it's done. That's it. Then it doesn't. That's you know how I feel about them. Sometimes they have titles, but not always. I always feel like titles feel a bit pretentious to me, and that's possibly something I need to change about how I look about artworks. But that particular one was one of a series of many. I've done many incarnations of that particular imagery of a sexless, bodiless, light being floating in space, um, with cord connections to stars. It's just something that, you know, I've had visions of not only with ayahuasca, and other medicinal journeys, but also just in my regular visionary internal world. It's just something that I've always had that image of. There is certainly, I was experimenting a lot more with geometry, um, and how you can create all kinds of interesting, beautiful patterns. But it's also an attempt to kind of begin to render the imagery that comes with ayahuasca, because it's so astonishing. I can't help but want to recreate that in some way. It never, ever, ever, in my experience so far, has ever come anywhere near close to what what I'm actually experiencing. And I think there's other artists out there that have done it, that just have got the visual language down. And I don't really want to replicate that. So this is just my, it's just my experimentation with vectors, basically, because it kind of feels like, when you build images and you build stuff using digital software and you use vectors, that will just make anything. It's fractal, isn't it? And I just really enjoy it. It's really that. It's kind of also that simple that I did quite a lot of these kind of works because I just really enjoy putting a bunch of triangles together and putting some colour on it and seeing how what happens, and the illusions that are created, the optical illusions that are created. I just really enjoy it. I could do it. I could spend hours and hours and hours on it, to be honest. I hope I hope that answers your question. There you go.
So why are you drawn to using vectors so much in your work, and can you describe the significance of the vectors in your paintings, please?
Oh my God, that's like I think that's possibly the hardest question I have ever been asked. Okay, so it's just a shape that like first and foremost, it's a shape that I'm just quite obsessed with, and it's actually tetrahedrons that I'm really interested in. So I've got like a pyramid shape, like three-dimensional pyramid shape, but with a sort of a square base, a triangle base. And so everything, I think pretty much most of the stuff, if you actually look, it's based on a triangular form. Strongest shape in nature, it's how buildings, it's how stuff is created. So I'm going I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess by my own internal will. I don't know, to be honest. It's just something that I've always been attracted to. I don't ever remember having a conscious decision of going, yes, I would base my work on tetrahedrons. I don't remember that. I work really intuitively, and I just kind of just let things happen. I don't plan a lot before I paint. They just kind of happen. So when they're finished, I always take a look and go, how did that happen? Which makes starting a new painting always quite weird and scary, because I always go, how did I do that? I can't even remember how it started. It's like some kind of weird amnesia. So it's really hard for me to talk about painting, and I'm always in. Yeah, this probably annoys you a lot about me, but quite elusive about it, because it's just kind of let it happen. And when I over intellectualize stuff too much, it always ends up flat, and or over plan it, or or want to say something. Go in with like, I know you should perhaps go in with an intention. There is an intention, and that's to create something beautiful, because what's the antidote to fear but beauty? So that's always the intention. But so yeah, I mean, I've definitely looked at and been interested in sacred geometry. I haven't, which is unlike me, studied it to the point of knowing everything really well. I mean, I'm very interested in how sacred geometry appears, particularly in architecture around the world, in ancient cultures. It's really hard to spend time in Peru and to not notice it, and to not be aware of like that it's kind of hidden all over the place. But it also appears in the rocks and the crystals, or there's lots of, in Peru there's lots of basalt, columns of basalt, like you get in Giant's Causeway, so that they have that hexagonal shape to the crystal formation, and it's always mind-blowing to me. And then of course you can't walk around Peru without seeing perfectly formed square blocks, and yeah, so it's kind of everywhere, really. It's really hard to not to be influenced by. I'm really influenced by my environments, and so I think the more I look into things, the more I look into nature and how nature does its thing, and fractals, how fractals work, and then it that's just sort of how it's manifested in my artwork. Sorry, I think that was quite a lot of waffle. I do apologise if I didn't answer your question. Trina, can you talk about your use of symbols and geometry in your artwork? Because I noticed you do have a lot of flower of life, and what that means for you specifically. Yeah, and how important that is to your paintings.
So when I painted in Cyprus, College of Art, I was painting a lot of the light shining and twinkling on the ocean's surface. And I was also painting that whilst I was reading a lot about Zen Buddhism. And there was this passage in the Zen Buddhism about how, that we're all connected, we're all one whole waterfall, but when we're falling from the mountain, then we're separate and we become like separate droplets in that one whole waterfall. And so I've always painted the idea, and I have the fact that everything is one and everything is connected and everything is and I just have used the language of the flower of life to bring that story into all of my work, the story of the light on the water, the the atoms and the atoms in the river, in our bodies, in the air, it's all, like through physics we can describe how everything is not solid. It's all just 99.9% empty space, and that's what fascinates me. And I do. There has been a lot of artists that come and talk about sacred geometry, and and I have had a lot of visions about it and researched it and understand it. And I also see it as being a sort of alchemy tool. So it sets some kind of alchemy in the painting, like it's a language that vibrates beyond the physical reality, and it's a language that nature speaks because it's in everything. It's in sacred geometry, is in all of nature, as it's in everything, as the same as the atoms, as the same as the light twinkling on the water. It's that whole idea. So I feel like through every painting, I'm saying that everything's one, and that's basically why I use the sacred geometry. And I also like to use it as a template. And there was an artist, and I've forgotten her name, that did teach me that if you put sacred geometry behind the painting as a template, then you can't go wrong with composition. It always creates the best composition if you follow that kind of skeleton. And so I've been doing that a lot, whether I'll continue doing it, but I do kind of like it. And I am kind of really, yeah, just kind of getting, maybe I'm getting a bit old and getting stuck in a rut, but yeah, that's the idea behind that. So the portrait that you created in your time at Sachaqa, it took you a long time, and I really admired the journey that you went on to create that portrait. Can you just walk us through the portrait? And after that, I think it was at the birth of your self-portrait series that came from the one that you did at Sachaqa. And what was it about being in with us that brought that out of you, the self-portrait?
I think it wasn't just the start of me doing self portraits. It was the start of me as like I was expressing myself as an artist in a way I've always wanted to, and that I'll always be forever grateful for Sachaqa and the residency for that, because I before I came to you, I wasn't particularly I wasn't very good at being imaginative as an artist. It's something I'd always wanted to do, and I'd been honing my skills, uh, painting landscapes and animals and nature and stuff. But I always felt like I wasn't really saying anything. so much. And I came to Sachaqa with a little watercolour A4 painting that I had done a couple of years before. That was just the sort of the shell. It was the head emerging. It wasn't even me in that picture. It was just a head emerging from water, and it was, you know, dark green, British rivers, you know, that kind of colour. Um, that I thought, well, maybe I can, you know, expand on this, and that's when I decided to do it as a self-portrait. And I thought I'd just end up doing it, you know, it would just sort of end up as just the head, but the you cannot I just don't know how anybody could not let the environment of the jungle, which is so intense, not affect their artwork. You know how it just like it just seeps in all the time, and it's so green, and you know, and my painting was already going to be green from the river sort of thing, and the rivers in San Roque are, you know, that lovely emeralds and all sorts of lovely colours. It was just like the most perfect place, and for me it kind of felt like my, you know, my own emerging from, you know, from the depths, the place I couldn't really, wasn't expressing myself, that I was sort of held under, you know. And so this was my, you know, this is my, you know, my passion painting for myself to emerge and finally breathe, you know, all that kind of stuff. Um, and you know, it's nice to have some animal supporters with you as well. There's lots of animals in that painting as well, and there is a little moth, a green moth on that painting. And while I was painting it, I was painting at night, which was always quite difficult in the jungle because, of course, you've got to have the light on. And when you have the light on, loads of stuff comes flying at your head constantly, even if you're in, you know, a blocked off place. They find their ways to get in. And I was painting away, and the next thing, that a little green moth landed on the other side. And it was like it was just perfectly composed within, you know, it composed itself in my painting perfectly. So I painted it on the other side, and then, of course, once it had finally gone in the morning, I painted it in on the other side. So, you know, it's like the jungle all comes in. And then another time I came downstairs to find a blue morpho Sachaqa butterfly was in, had, you know, was dead and was in the room next to my workstation. So I think that ended up in the painting as well, or it ended up in some other paintings as well. There's just like, you know, it's the most abundant place. It just gives you so many gifts of like, not just, and you know, physical gifts, and you know, of the animals and the relationships that you see all the time, the sounds, which, you know, I hope that sometimes come through in visual stuff. I don't know how, but um, yeah, how it just it's just the most powerful place to well, it was for me. It was just like the most perfect environment. You know, I had no distractions. It was just me, artwork. I'm a horrendous procrastinator, so it's really it was really good. I hadn't got much else to do other than sit in a hammock, which I did do quite a lot of. Um, but you know, it was just like, right, just get on and paint. And yeah, you know, I still look at that painting now and just like, where did that come from? It's me, you know. It's just, it's a really important thing for me. It really unlocked me, my, you know, like it really showed me what I could do. Um, it's quite a process. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, so the second portrait I'd like to talk about is the one that you did in Pisac. I mean, to say that you're not an imaginative painter, or you found that hard. I mean, come on, Laura, they're the most imaginative paintings I've ever seen in my entire life, and you can just tell that it's the language. You know, the same language that I'm speaking, because I recognise it. You know, I can see it. I can see that you're grasping an element here, and you're teaching here, and a vision there, and it's kind of, I think we piece the same puzzles together in a way, and actually talking about it together and making me realise more and more how that's why I resonate so much with your work. You know, I look at your wall and I just think that painting hasn't got 150 likes or 200 likes, whatever. Because to me, it just is, it's genius. It's so genius. And it's like, I feel like, like with Van Gogh, it's like, I get it. I get it. I get that painting, it's just like, why isn't that in the tape, man? Do you know what I mean? That's what I think about it. It's just, there is something that's kind of a bit shocking about it, and um it is a very, very powerful painting. It really is. So if you can talk us through that painting, and tell us what you were thinking about and where you were going with it.
I think I did give that painting a name. I think I even wrote it on it. I just can't remember what it was, but it was probably something to do with infinity and space and something, and I just can't remember. I'll have it written down perhaps somewhere. I'm not sure. They're just so. It's really nice what you said, and I totally agree with you. I feel like I have an affinity, with you and your work, because you just blow my mind. Your work blows my mind. You're the queen of glow. I don't know how you do it either, with just some, just a bit of chalk and some, and a and a binder, a medium. I just like, oh man, it's really, really, really skillful. It kind of just blows my mind. Um, but yeah, that painting again was just one that it was just kind of like me just playing basically, and I always find that's my best stuff. Is when I'm just playing around. I've done a couple of sort of like zigzaggy rainbow faces, which again, it's all inspired by the the visual world that comes with ayahuasca journeys. And it's just another attempt at trying to render that in my own kind of way. And I guess at the time, I painted that in a very, very mystical place that is, I mean, it's so profoundly mystical and colourful. You can't walk through the streets, through the markets or anything without being, you know, um, presented with massive amounts of amazing colour that all kind of works together, and mind blowing. The people just walking down the street. The women are just and the men are just dressed in like this most vibrant colours. It's so inspiring. It's like, for me as an artist, I was just like, oh, just couldn't get enough of the colour. Um, so yeah, I guess that is absolutely an influence. Definitely other visionary artists. I'm terrible with names. Um, but yeah, I definitely saw a lot. I mean, I've been exposed to, indigenous artists like Pablo Amaringo and various others from Paul Kalper. And they, there's a wonderful vibrancy, visual language, and it's a visual language that just appears all the time because everyone's having this similar visual experience. So, geometrics, doorways, experiences in space, and and all the weird stuff that moves all the time. Zigzaggy stuff as well. I always thought, all the zigzaggy, snaky stuff that comes all the time. So, so I probably looked at quite a few artists at how they did it, and then, and then try to come up with my own sort of way of doing it. There's lots of little doorways in that painting that you see so often just walking around Cuzco. I spent a lot of time wandering around the outskirts amongst ruins and looking for these interesting little doorways that just appear all over the place, and with that very I think is it trapezoid shape, small at the top, wide at the bottom, that you see if like at Machu Picchu you see it. And so that is really hard to not be inspired by that. It's a really nice shape as well. And doorways, I like the idea that you can create these lots of different little spaces, little kind of little portals to investigate into. There's quite a lot in that painting, lots of colours and um, different shapes. What I wanted to do with the colour palette, it doesn't. I can't always pick it up from from the photographs, but all the colours are vibrating colours. So I spent a really long time mixing the correct hues that will vibrate off each other. And so it got painted over and painted over and painted over until everything started to vibrate. So what I wanted it to look like was like a big vibrating assault on the senses initially, until you start to sort of break down and get used to it, and then kind of get used to the colour palette and the shapes, and then take you on a little journey itself. And then and then maybe the face again. I didn't plan this out, it kind of just evolved over time. It started off as just a normal self-portrait that I just started to do because I was a bit bored. I'd stretched a canvas and just started painting this portrait, and then it just evolved into that again. And I spent a lot of time. There's something that like the Peruvian skies are amazing because of the lack of light pollution. It just seems like everywhere else I've ever been, because I spent a lot of time in cities and whatever. But this, it's so unpolluted. It just seems like there's more stars there than there is anywhere else. And I mean, obviously, it's the same when you go to other places that don't have a lot of light pollution. So I was just really spent so much time just amazed at the skies and the amount of stars. So I probably spent the same, a similar amount of time in the evenings, out in the dark as I did in the daylight, to be honest. So obviously that's had an effect on my work, and on that piece itself. But so it's weird for you to say that, because once it felt slightly disposable to me, that painting, because I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And people's responses who saw it were just like, wow, that is really cool. But to me, sorry about that. But to me, it was just something that wouldn't go anywhere. It wouldn't have, its value really is only to a small community of specific people who would not necessarily get it, because that's not really important, but just enjoy it and not just look at it and go, what is that, and it's the kind of problem that I was having at the time, and probably still do have, actually, that I come from a place where I've taken my work to galleries and they've gone, no, they wouldn't sell or even consider certain things that weren't just really easy to sell, or what's the word for it? That weren't easily recognisable. I'm sure there are places, but I just hadn't sought them out. So for me, it was just kind of a training exercise in a way of like what I could do, what I was made of in a way. And yeah, so it didn't really do anything, go anywhere for me. If you know, it was just kind of I just I've lost my train of thought. Yes, so I would like to ask you about um, a couple of your artworks, particularly Dance Mind and Modern Jesus, because to look at them, they look so complex. And when I first started to be interested in doing something a bit more imaginative, I always, and as I've just mentioned before, I don't know where to start, you know, because they're so complex. It's like layers upon layers upon layers. I would like to know about your process of how you plan that out. Do you just let it happen, or do you have a clear vision of it in your mind before you start? Um, Obviously, there's always a little element of evolving and things, but how if you sketchbook, um, yeah, and just how you got to those, particularly Dance Mind, which is really complex. There's lots of elements to it. Yeah, and if you could please explain about that, I'd love to know.
Modern Jesus was a painting that, you know, is kind of one that I started to manifest when I was visiting England, and I was meditating under a massive oak tree at my cousin's house. I mean, she's like me. Me and my cousin have the same gift that came from our grandmother. And so when I'm with her, it's always a magical experience, you know, like it's like we have these conversations like this world that people will be like, well, what they're going on about, you know, but we just get it. And so yeah, I was meditating under the tree, and I just had an experience there, and I just thought, right, I'm going to take a picture of that tree, and I want to paint it. And so, and Modern Jesus again, that I've lost where I was going, but I know that it's to do with my struggle at the time to come back to being close and to Jesus. I've had, you know, I know people don't like talking about religion and Jesus and stuff, but and it is been a big part of my spiritual journey. And I mean, I used to pray in a fundamentalist Chinese church in Edinburgh many years ago when I was in love with Kenny Chan, my first true love, and yeah, and so Jesus was a big part of my story then, and then I kind of got lost because, you know, like how um I kind of got lost in life, and because I was working with homeless people, and I worked a lot in like night shelters, and I worked in a homeless community for 8 months, and then that became a big part of my story because the paintings helped me to navigate myself back to where I'm at right now. And so then I realized that through painting, that became my medicinal tool to find my way, you know, and my paintings have helped me to navigate and find my way. And also through doing the plant medicine, a lot of people don't realize through doing plant medicine, most people, even Pablo Amaringo, come back to Jesus because his spirit and his energy comes, and he's just pure love, and is pure, you know, is the light, you know, that you know, if you're ever doubting where to go, you know, when you navigate in the internal world, then that is just a pure light to follow, you know. And so it was kind of like my bringing my old religious kind of things that I wanted to leave behind, the old religious kind of, all that horrible church stuff, and bringing it back into my new reality, which is being more connected with universe and being, like in the jungle, people just kill all snakes because they just think they're all evil and they're all gonna, kill them. But there's a lot of many beautiful snakes like the rainbow serpent, which is not dangerous really to humans because it's a boa restrictor. And a lot of snakes are just going on their way. They're not really bothered. But it's also I believe it's because it's a very big Catholic village, and so we have these prejudices against animals, like the wolf, for example, as being evil, and we have these kind of myths and legends that and religions that are, demonizing animals in a way, and it makes it easier to kill a snake. You wouldn't kill a dove, but you would kill a snake. I know that snakes are venomous, but if it's not really harming you, why would you need to harm it? And so it was kind of like that, like if Jesus was to come, to coming back into my world, then coming back through the divine feminine and coming back through this, what would his main voice be? His main voice, if I know that Jesus being such a loving, beautiful, amazing, son of God that he is, he would be like, look at what you're doing to the environment, look what you're doing to all these animals, how can you kill them all? He'd be so devastated as I'm devastated to see it all, and he would be connecting with that oak tree, and he would just be like, he would be aligning his chakras and he would be meditating, that's how I see Jesus now. So I have a new image of Jesus and that energy and that light, and it was about me having a relationship with Jesus through this new understanding and tying them both together. And now, like I'm just walking with Jesus, like and that makes me feel protected and safe, and that new relationship is so important to me because it was really important to my grandmother, and it's very important to my father, and we carry that protection through, and I've been protected all my life, and I believe that I've been protected all my life through my father's prayers and my grandmother's prayers. And I sometimes worry what's going to happen when my dad moves on, and who's going to pray for me. Like I have to continue, and I always think I have to continue to pray because it's so important to pray for my children, and 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 keep that protected, beautiful shelter that Jesus brings. And like, and just praying for Mother Earth, praying for all the animals, praying for the destruction of the rainforest. That was what that painting was about. Well, my paintings since Cyprus College of Art times have helped me to come to terms with life in a way that is very an intense experience for me, this life experience. And so I have always since that time processed and looked for my internal answers and tried to navigate dreams and visions, and what I'm learning at the time. For me, it's not it's more of it's very complicated world that I live in internally, and I'm always trying to understand and evolve. And so Dance Mind came at a time when I was really interested in Eckhart Tolle. I'd done a plant dieta with Pepe Ordonez, and a lot of that dieta was around how I was utilizing my energy, and showing me how when I'm thinking about somebody, or let's say I've had a conversation with somebody, And then I carry on thinking and analysing and take that conversation apart. Should I have said that? Or maybe I hurt when I said that. Or shouldn't have said that? And just taking the whole conversation apart. That was opening an energetic telephone line to that person. You know, when you're thinking about somebody and just like how, over analysing and overthinking and thinking about somebody else, or, you know, that how that is, when once you've done a plant dieta, you've got nothing in your mind. You're like, I've got nothing in my mind. I'm not thinking about anything. And so to continue that work, I was really listening to a lot of Eckhart Tolle podcasts. With the Oprah Winfrey Super Soul Sundays, I would advise anyone to go through those Eckhart Tolle podcasts because they really, really helped me out. And at that time, I had a vision or a dream about, it was a really weird dream about lots of fragments of a bunny rabbit or something in a tree. I don't know what it was, but it kind of like that dream, I was like that, it kind of to me it kind of said this idea of, not solidifying the the thoughts we have, that we've got to dance over the judgments of the conversation, or the judgment of the person and the thought of the person, and the over analyzing and all of that, that it's to just kind of like allow everything to be perfectly disordered in order, and let all thought go, and just let go of it, and like my leg was showing in one painting, and one part of the painting, and then it kind of disappears again, and then another leg. So it's kind of like me kind of, not being a solid, not being so solid in things, and being more flowing and letting go of it, and just becoming one with nature, and become one with the no mind, although it seems very complicated, I know. And the butterflies, do you know what, I should write a diary of different visions that I have, because a lot of the times these pieces of the puzzle that come from dreams, or visions that I have, are the butterflies. I'm not sure. I can't remember where they came from now. Like it was such a deep process, because when I'm painting a picture, it's such a deep process of understanding for me. It's an understanding of something, and yeah, and so at one point, there's like there's parts of my body in it as well, and I really didn't want the parts of the body to be sexualized at all. It's not about being sexy or anything like that. It is, so I had to put, like cover up one part of my body with a leaf, because there was a group of children that came into the studio, and the professor was covering up the bum, and I realised that kind of changed the vibration of the painting, from one of being about a spiritual process to, so you've got to be careful, like how the viewer portrays the painting, because that to me can change the shape of the message that the original intention had. So I kind of cleaned that up after that, and so yeah, the dance mind was a really, really deep process that I was going through after my dieta, and I'm still practicing that as much as I can, not to hold on to thoughts in any way, and to, I used to think, right, I've just got to process that thought, I've got to think about that so that I can find a conclusion. But there's no conclusions in thought processes. It's just a load of noise. It's a load of noise, and if you turn it off, then the answer just pops out of the right place, and you get into that flow. But sometimes we get so caught up in life, and then those thoughts just start playing away, and they just go on automatic as well, don't they? The thoughts, they just go on automatic mode. Sometimes you don't even know where you've gone in thoughts. You're not present and in the moment and where you're at right now. So it's a lot about presence and being in the moment, and also like with the Taurus, about grounding to the earth and just allowing that energy to flow, going circulating without attachment to anything, to be in centered in the painting, and then allow all of that kind of noise to fly out the butterflies, like release out the Taurus, so it's about that dance mind. And although I suppose you could paint another painting about nothingness and being still, because it's a very movement painting. But I think that's what happens with a painting. It's moving all over. It's moving fast, but then that line brings you back down to the center. It brings you, for all that chaos, the Taurus helps to bring everything back into a centered place, so you don't get dizzy and you don't get lost, So then in a way it kind of functions as the medicine that I was looking for at the time. So it's a medicinal painting, I think, and a good friend of my father's actually bought that painting, and so it's in Pierre's house in Bradford. So yeah, I do really love that painting, actually. It's a very important piece.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I get that a lot. That's why I work with self-portrait, I think, because it's a way to process what's going on, how I feel, um, how I feel particularly about where I am, where we are as a global community, and just a way of processing that, because I find the self, that my face is everyone's face. We can all relate to expressions, and the processes that you can see written on a person's face. And and then the painting gives me a space anyway. It gives me space to stop thinking. Just shut it off, get going, get painting, and it's that sort of release from the feelings that I'm trying to paint. It's a really interesting process.
So the Dimensional series is the work that you did when you went back to the UK, I think. I mean, after being, it's like the language has changed again, hasn't it? I mean, it's changed, but it's not changed. It's quietened down a bit, it's like a different, you're kind of going inwards and outwards between light and darkness in these ones. It seems like it's pulsating, or I'm not going to project on it. So you tell me what that series is saying and where it's coming from for you.
Oh no, it's interesting to hear what you see, what your take is, because that's what's most important, I think, is what others take from it, or take from any artwork. I always find that far more interesting than what the artist has. Well, actually, this is the only thing I think I've had for a long time where I've actually had a concept. And again, it's all about dimensions, and how there's dimensions in everything, in the visible color spectrum, in the light, in the absence of light, and it's all that kind of stuff. And I was also, I think around this time, I'd been to see a Hilma af Klint exhibition, and there's not many artist names I remember,
But hers I do, because I just think she's got just a absolutely phenomenal artist, and I I was influenced by her for quite a long time. Still am. I still pore over her works. They're just amazing. But this was just my attempt at working with voids, I suppose. I've always been quite interested in the idea of the void or zenith, whatever else it's called in various different cultures, or the gap. That there's a gap in your, in your thoughts, I suppose, is a simple way of putting it. But or as beings that can experience different dimensions, there's got to, I always find that there's like a little way in, there's a little gap, there's a little slither of something, that catches your eye and can take you down a little path, physically, mentally, spiritually. And I just get really obsessed with that gap, those little tiny parts of like magical parts of, like, just like the day itself, sunrise, sunset, very small part of the day where something, spectrally magical happens. That just it just blows my mind. Catching a crystal in a certain light, or you get the refracted color spectrum. And just those kind of tiny little magical gaps, and that sometimes I have those in my thoughts, that take me into like an interesting place where I don't know, my thoughts make me distracted, and then I go into like a really cool universal thought or multiversal thought, whatever. So I just got really interested in rendering those, basically, rendering them as simply as possible. Because my paintings are always quite complicated, and it's quite a reflection of me as a person. So I was just wondering, I haven't really worked abstract very often. I'd done a few little things here and there, but I really liked how, simple colour passages or simple compositions of colour, what they can do and how they make you feel, and I never really explored that. So these, I just had so much fun with. Really enjoyed painting them. Just really enjoyed the colours. I love working with rainbow colours. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about that.
My last question. So, what are you working on right now? And can you describe Sachaqa in 3 words? I love you, Laura. You're a legend, and this podcast is very, very cool. I've really enjoyed putting it together, and I love seeing it all together and love hearing. It's just been medicine for me, as you always are, medicine for me.
I was going to ask you the same question. What are you working on? So I really want to know. You always know how to get right to my core and to ask all the difficult questions of myself that I don't ask myself. You always did it. You did it when I was at Sachaqa. You just be like, get right to my core, which I can't ever be grateful enough for you being who you are and have come into my life. I'm so lucky. I don't think the having you there was such really helped me prepare. You gave me so much confidence in myself. I had, I really struggle with that. I'm a self-taught artist. I've struggled with it all along, and you've always just gone, shut that up and just get on, just do something, just get painting, just get, and I've been really struggling with it for quite a long time, and with what to do with my artwork, because I kind of like I feel like I'm quite out of the world that I was in. I'm in a different environment, and and so I feel like the more spiritual stuff hasn't really come to me like it used to. As I've been trying to get my feet more on the ground, but be more grounded basically. And so of recent spent a lot more time working mainly just on just normal portraits, call them normal portraits of people's faces, just to get good at it basically, just to get good, efficient, and just to be able to do it quickly and well. And the same with landscapes as well. I've just been painting that kind of stuff, so I kind of feel like I've been doing loads of kind of quite boring stuff, but I've been, it's really enjoyable for me. It's stuff that I can just sort of churn out. I have to do something, create something, no matter what it is. But I do have a quite extremely visionary piece that I started to work on when it came. It's been sort of hanging around now in my studio for a while, like a long while. That has been, it's like it's calling me. I can be sitting downstairs and I can hear it going, come and work on me. You want to. But it's been a bit of a conundrum. I haven't really known what to do with it. It's a bit mental. So yeah, I can't. So I think I'm probably going to get working on it again. So I think I want to marry the worlds again. Marry these worlds together somehow. Maybe that's what the next phase is. But at the moment I'm just kind of going into the next level of my skill that I feel I need to sort of propel. But I know you'll have something to say about that. So I hope. Yeah, we'll see. I also do a lot of illustration and sort of cartoon work that I'm kind of really, pen and ink stuff that I'm kind of really enjoying doing at the moment. Kind of satirical stuff. But with what's happening globally right now, as far as, being locked down, this is the perfect opportunity, isn't it? I mean, to start to paint a world in which I want to live in, after this. Mainly for myself, but of course everything I do for myself I want others to experience, if it's peaceful, joyful world in which we get to live creatively and have more time for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones, for strangers, so that's also in the back of my mind. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this has all come from doing that little internet search of artist residencies, and then one just popping up in Peru and thinking, that sounds like fun. It's absolutely propelled me from being, in one place into a place I never really ever knew I could ever get to. I would never have imagined, as I showed up in Sachaqa, would I think that I would be carrying out of there some stuff that I still look at now and go, who did that? Mind-blowing. Yeah, so I'm just forever grateful that you've gone to all the effort to create this experience. And so my 3 words will be life-changing, hyphenated. So I think that classes as 1 word, because it is absolutely paradigm shifting. I would put in challenging, because I did find the jungle environment very challenging to begin with, but it just amazed me how quickly I kind of got into it and stopped finding everything terrifying. Everything just moves. It just constantly moves, and there's noise, and it's amazing. It's just, but it soon becomes like the soothing baby's rattle. I love it. It's a beautiful place. And then my 3rd word, of course, is magical, because there was something to amaze me that I had no idea even existed almost every day. I once left my light on to my bedroom by accident, and then when I came up, the whole ceiling was covered in moths, like absolutely just covered in moths. And there must have been, like, I didn't see any multiples of the same moth. They were all different, and I could not believe it. It's the most abundant and varying and just magic, just spectacular, magical place, honestly. So yeah, thank you so much for chatting to me today. It feels I really needed that, actually. I forgot that this is a podcast. Other people could listen to it, but it just felt like, like you telling me that I need to sort myself out and go and paint again. So I feel like I've had my Trina tell-off, which I love. Yeah, I feel all pumped up, ready to go, get some more artwork out there. And again, we'll be waiting. Can't wait to see what you do next, that's for sure. Yeah, and for any artists who are thinking of going there, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Absolutely, yeah, really did so much for me. I can't. Thank you so much, Trina.
Well, I'm not sure that I created the art centre to do all that it does. I just think that just evolved out of circumstances, and I definitely always feel that I'm guided by universe. I kind of walk around in a trance without any logic whatsoever, and sometimes I just feel like, that these ideas that I have and the meetings I have, like meeting Daniel Lerner, for example, who brought me to the jungle, and what he's taught me, and what the living with Indigenous people have taught me as well, and combining all of those experiences that I'm grateful to the universe for. It's not something, I don't think creating something like Sachaqa is, you can't just sit down and imagine it and with your logic, it's going to do this and this and that, and it's just kind of like evolved. I mean, my original intention for building an art centre in Peru is because I wanted to live in Peru, and I wanted to find people like you. I wanted to find other artists that were like-minded, like I craved that, and that's why I created the art centre, to be honest. And then everything that has evolved out of it is just from meeting amazing artists after amazing artists, and following their needs, and also the community, like like wanting to be the bridge to that knowledge of Indigenous people and stuff. So yeah, and I think that our relationship's special because, and it's mutual. It works two ways. It's not one-sided because I'm such an amazing person. I think it's just our relationship has always been magical, and it's always been very healing for me as well, on a mutual basis. And I've had quite two people saying it was challenging. I guess it is challenging. And what's wrong? And I think that the challenge, it's definitely a good word. You could say it as a bad word, but I see challenge as being a good word. Challenge is life changing. Comfortable is not life changing. Challenges. And so there. I'm painting a piece now that is a vision that I had when I was walking to Patronus. Actually, I've never really had a vision whilst I was walking, but this day I had a really clear vision, and it was a vision of a space rocket, like not a real space rocket, more of a child. As you imagine a space rocket to be as a child, with all of the garden friends, like all of the pachicos and the butterflies and the moths and the plants, and all being taken to outer space on a space rocket. And it came out of this idea when the Amazon rainforest was on fire, and just like, that silly idea of creating a new life on a different planet. But I don't know, I just thought it was the funniest vision I've ever had. And so I want to put humour in it, and I'm not sure what take to go on it. Is it going to be science fiction? Is it going to be, it's hard with these visions to create something that's surreal without people saying, well, that won't happen. It won't be like that, so it's kind of like the biblical Noah's Ark story as well. And it's also a funny take of how ridiculous it's got to the point where everything was on fire for so long, and that really, really upset me. So I guess this is a new painting, and I'm actually painting bigger now. I want to paint bigger for some reason. I just want to paint something that's a bit more sculptural, a bit more form based. I want to think more about the form. And I just think that when it's bigger, it's more monumental, and so then I want to do a series, although it is quarantine, but I don't feel like I've got as much time to paint either, because I'm homeschooling the children and I'm doing the podcasts, and it's really with painting, you've got to discipline yourself, and you've got to say, right, this is the time that I'm going to do it. And I find it hard to get into a painting, but when I get into it, then I get quite obsessive and I can't stay away from the studio. So it's just, I find the beginning of a painting really hard work, and then I get into it. But anyway, Laura, always a pleasure, always a pleasure. I hope that, I'm sharing all of the images of your work on the YouTube channel, and I, together with my work as well. I really wanted to, at one stage, have our work together in some kind of exhibition or gallery, because it's, there's many artists that come to Sachaqa, but there's none that I've really, really connect with on, with the artwork, and been more inspired by, and I'm more educated by you. You're a self-taught artist, but, for me, you're a legend, and I can't believe that it's just the beginning of your journey with it, really. It's for me, you've got to keep going. I'm always saying that. You've got to keep going, and I'm always your number one fan. Because I guess I understand the power of you, and I understand the beauty of you, and the depth and the intelligence, and I just want to see it in a vision, in a painting, and so that it's materialized. And I want to see it in a gallery. I want to see it in the Tate. But anyway, thanks very much, Laura, and I hope you have all of your dreams come true and everything works out well for you, and you keep painting and you don't do anything else but paint and just get on with it. Lots of love. Bye bye. Thank you.